Hey everybody, if you've been watching Get Creative Goa's Insights, then you will know that very recently we did an insight with Sapna from Blurb, who's a food consultant and marketing expert in this area. And we asked her what's going on with the new Goan food scene. There are so many restaurants that have started off here in Goa, and the question is why? What really is the reason behind it? And if you watch the insights, you'll understand, her point of view on it. But I'm here today at a place called the Village Bistro, which is a brand new restaurant on the Goan food scene, and it has been started by Chef Gratian.
Hi, Vince. How are you?
Good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
Chef Gratian is not just a very experienced chef, cooking all over the world. Started off very humbly in Mumbai and then went on to places like UK, where he picked up a lot of his expertise from. And now he's back, not just as a chef, but also as a consultant. So we reached out to him, and he's been very kind to share with us his time today, where we asked him if he could, for Get Creative Goa and the viewers, give us a bit of insight into how he makes a very hearty chicken soup. Why a hearty chicken soup? Well, it's monsoons now.
Yeah.
It's going to be cold. It's
Yeah.
going to be damp. And there's nothing like coming home and having a really hot, hearty chicken soup.
Absolutely.
That's one, to keep you warm. But the second thing is also there are times when people fall sick during this time and they have colds and all. And I think that chicken soup for the soul, you can't go wrong with it.
You can't go wrong.
Right? So that's the basic point we're here. First of all, Chef, before we get into the dish, tell us a little bit about the Village Bistro. What is the spirit of this restaurant? What's the concept behind it? What are you trying to do here with it?
So what I'm trying to do essentially is European food, but a modern interpretation of European food. So we're picking on classics. So the menu is construed about classics, which I feel are some of them forgotten, some of them just not kind of done to probably in a manner that I would like to see it. So what the entire essence of the food menu is that we're just taking a classic and we're doing modern interpretations of the classics. That's pretty much 70 or 80% of the menu. Of course, in not everything is a classic. I mean, the soup to some extent is a classic, because today we talk about a French style velouté. It is a classic. So we've taken this humble classic, but we've elevated it according to what I think it can be elevated. So that's the Village Bistro food philosophy.
Got it.
That's what we're trying to do.
As a Goan yourself, do you bring any Goan influences into some of the reconstruction of these classics?
I think I'm using Goan ingredients. Okay. I'm not using any sort of interpretations, I think. That is something. So this is strictly a European restaurant. Of course, our close ties to Portugal keeps us very close to Europe. So,
yeah.
And I'm a big fan of what what Portugal does with food. So yes, there are a few Portuguese dishes on the menu, but nothing which is Goan. Nothing that's Goan.
And that's fair. That's fair. Okay, so maybe you want to take us through, the basic ingredient, and let's be mindful that we're keeping this as simple as possible so that any of you at home can make this dish. We will be putting up the recipe. Chef is being gracious enough to share the recipe with us, and we're going to have it in the caption. But for now, he's just going to run us through a bit of the ingredients.
Yeah, so let's start with a few basics that I think are required to make a good chicken soup. You start with the stock.
Yep.
Yeah, it's basically the flavor of the soup will come from the stock. For those of you at home who are
hard
pressed for time, because if you have busy schedules and things like that, another option is your ready Maggi cubes. That being said, I wouldn't advise so much. For it, try and make chicken stock. It's super easy. It's simple. The best thing of it all, it freezes really well. So if you make a liter of stock, and you have to literally use 200 ml. Basically, every day you got 800 ml back in your freezer. Just take it out, let it kind of come to room temperature and use it. right? So stock, this is something that we make in-house. Our process is quite lengthy. This stock is basically made for 2 hours. We use a whole chicken. We basically blanch it in water, and then it's got a lot of mirpoa, which is onion, carrot, leek, celery, and then the chicken is kind of slow cooked in there, and then it's passed through a shinua, and then you finally get chicken stock.
Got it. So full of flavor.
Full of flavor, hearty. Very very light again. Chopped onion.
Okay.
I mean, simple, easy.
Yes.
Chopped garlic. Chives.
Yeah.
If you don't have chives, use spring onion, no problem.
Got it.
Good quality olive oil, butter, which is important. Chicken,
Yes.
of course, most importantly, right?
Can't make a chicken soup without chicken.
Without chicken, yeah. We've got some leek here.
Okay.
We've got some thyme here, and we've got creme fraiche here.
Okay.
So that's what. These are the ingredients that we use here. In this little bottle is a bit of white wine.
What kind of white wine are you talking
Don't
about
use
here?
anything that's sweet, because anything that you're going to use is sweet. That sweet is going to make your soup sweet. So white wine for sure, but make sure you look for dry white wine.
Okay.
So
Like any names you would suggest, because
I think the local white wine that you could probably get today, and something that's really affordable, is the Sula white wine that you get. The bottle costs about 220 rupees.
Yeah.
It's the Chenin Blanc. It's very very simple, easy to use, or for that matter, anything which is by Fratelli also. You can use any of these brands, because the important thing is to make sure that the white wine is not sweet.
Got it.
Because if you make that sweet, then your whole soup ends up getting sweet. And we're using Undo.
The good old Goan.
The good old Goan Undo. So like I said, I'm not doing Goan food, but I'm using Goan ingredients. So like this I felt was, the good old Undo, no one uses it anymore. We get this from our poder in Narpora. And I think we're trying to make good use of the Undo and bring out how we can use Undo in a very creative manner, because people are so used to using Undo, just the way they use it back home. But I think Goan bread, the poders, have a lot more diversity. I think, there can be multiple applications of good quality Goan bread.
Sure.
So these are the ingredients, Vince, that's
And these are
needed to
pretty.
make.
These ingredients are all
Yeah,
very
they're all available
in the reach of
absolutely, the reach of everyone.
Yeah.
Thyme, I think today is not something that you
Used to be exotic
That used to
once
be
upon a time.
exotic.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I think any supermarket today, Delfinos, whether it is anything that sells in some fresh produce, definitely has these ingredients there.
Yeah. Okay. So I think the next step is to jump straight into this dish. Let's go to your kitchen.
Yeah.
And let's just go for it, man. Let's just let you do your thing.
Great.
Okay.
Chalo.
Chef, let's get straight into the dish now.
Yeah. So we're going to go straight into the cook.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the pan comes on. The important part is to make sure that the pan gets hot, right?
How hot is hot?
Warm, I'd say, okay? So the first thing is to use olive oil, which we've got here. It's going straight into a pan, right? And we're just going to use then a little knob of butter, right?
Yeah.
And what this does is basically because of the butter has a slightly lower saturation or lower melting point. It kind of the olive oil balances it out, right? So when you get to this foam, right, then you just add in, the first thing you do is add in your onion, right?
Okay.
So you need this sizzle when you're cooking your onion, right?
Okay.
Because you want your pan to be hot but not very hot also, right? So we're just going to move this around and cook the onion a little bit, right? Then I'm just going to quickly add in a touch of garlic.
Okay.
Okay, wait that, swirl that around a little bit as well. So the important thing is that with European cooking, we do not brown like in Indian cooking, right? So it's important to regulate the heat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the temperature down now a little bit, all right?
Okay.
The next ingredient I'm going to add is thyme. We've got thyme here. I'm just going to pick a few sprigs and get that going into the soup, right? Yeah. What we then got here is a little bit of stock.
Okay.
Okay.
So what happens for those people that are not used to making stock at home and things? What can they use?
I think they can definitely use a simple Maggi cube. Today I think Knorr and these brands today are making decent enough like chicken bouillon, as we call it. So you can definitely use some of that, right? So now we've got the the stock in. So we're just going to increase the flame a little bit now.
I'm guessing a lot of this is obviously your experience, but also a lot of it is it's intuition, right?
Yes, a lot of it is also intuition. Like, so now, I mean, ideally I'm going to just let the stock boil for a little bit. Yeah, just come to a little bit of a simmer, right? And then we're just going to drop a few of these mushrooms in so that the mushrooms will just kind of cook into the stock.
These are just regular mushrooms.
These are regular button mushrooms. Today you can use any mushrooms that you probably get in the market. Today you can use, button mushrooms or something that grows maybe wild in the forest today in Goa. Today you can use some of those as well. I'm going to bring this up to a boil a little bit. Yeah, so the mushrooms are just going to cook into the soup.
Okay. How good is the soup during the monsoons?
I think it's great to make chicken soup in the monsoon because it's very hearty. I think it's very warm and the temperatures definitely dip down a little bit also. So it's nice to kind of have, hearty soups during the monsoon, right? So I think it's a great, it's a great
also
soup
the
to have in the
ingredients I was
monsoon.
noticing, like for example, you've got garlic in there, you've got thyme in there,
Yeah.
you've got a bit of onion, and these are great for immunity, right?
Yeah, these are very good, especially thyme, garlic and things like that, right? Very good for immunity for sure, right? Now, as you can see, the mushrooms are going to start to cook a little bit. Yeah.
You can already get that.
Yeah, you can get a little bit of that flavor in. Yeah. So now I'm just going to basically add a touch of white wine, and this is just going to give some little body to the soup as well, right? And also create a little bit of the acidity that you want from the soup. Stir that around a little bit. So now you can see the soup is slightly boiling away, right? Now what we're going to do is we need this soup to thicken up a little bit, right? So what I have here is something which is called a roux. It's made with equal parts of butter and flour. Right? There's different stages of cooking a roux. So in this case, we don't want the soup to be extremely brown. So we've cooked this roux just to a stage which is called the white roux, and there's two more stages which is the blonde roux and things like that. So what I'm going to do is while this is basically boiling away, I'm going to add a little touch of roux to this. And what this is going to do is just thicken up the soup a little bit.
Okay. So how would somebody do this at home?
So this at home is equal quantity of butter and flour.
That's it.
That's it. Simply cook down.
Okay.
Okay. And then onto a flame. And then you basically store it into a container like this, right?
Okay.
So now we just need to whisk this through so that you can see that the soup is starting to get some body. It's getting a little thick right now. Yeah. So depending on, of course, your likeness and your, how thick you want your soup, how thin you want your soup, you can add in as much roux as you want. I mean, in this case, I'd say, if a lot of people are not very happy with having thin soup, so they want their soup to be thicker.
Yeah.
So if you feel you want to add more roux, then you can just add a little bit more roux to this, and your soup will get thick as well.
Got it. Like a thickening agent of sorts.
Almost like a thickening agent, yeah. So, this is how you normally would thicken a soup, right? There's different other ways of thickening a soup as well. You can use mashed potato. That's another great way of thickening a soup. Some people will use egg yolk. That's a great thickener. But the problem with the egg yolk is that if you add too much egg yolk, the egg yolk will cook and turn into scrambled egg.
Got it.
So you got to be very careful with that, right?
Yeah.
So as you can see now, the soup is thickened from what we first started out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now the chicken is cooked separately.
Okay.
Okay. So if you don't have chicken that's cooked, you can also use raw chicken.
Okay.
And then cook it off separately. And in this case, we've got our chicken, which is basically for us in the restaurant here, we kind of cook this at a very, very low flame, which is called confit.
It's nice and
soft and juicy. Yeah. So when we're also using the thigh, we're not using breast because breast tends to dry out very, very fast. So in this case, we've used chicken thigh. And we do a method which is called confit, which is basically simply poaching in oil and fat for a long period of time.
So if someone was going to drop raw stuff into this at home, then how long would they be leaving the raw chicken in
The
there?
raw chicken, I think, if you're going to cut it to this size, then they're about 30 to 40 seconds. That's it. And then your chicken will cook.
Okay.
Because it's also going to boil in the broth as well, right? So that's the time it's going to cook as well. So the idea is that, you don't want it to be overcooked also.
Got it.
So in this case, that's why I didn't add add the chicken in the start because at the end of the day, the
Then
chicken
others
is
it just
cooked.
be-
It'll
and
just be
yeah,
overcooked,
and that's a
right?
famous thing
That's
that
a
we
famous
do
thing,
where
right?
we-
So now
we
that we've
overcook
got
meat.
the soup up to our thing, we're just going to season with a little bit of salt right here. Let's just drop in a touch of salt, okay? And whenever you're seasoning, also season right from the top so that you have it distributed all over. Because when you tend to generally season from this, you tend to also over season. So a little bit always from the top.
That's a great tip.
Yeah.
If you guys are listening,
So-
that's a fantastic expert tip right there. Always season from the top.
Yeah, always season from the top. So because you tend to drop a lot more when you're putting it right from here.
Yeah.
Because then you because
Yeah.
that's what it is, right? So now you can see the soup's thicken.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm just gonna add my chicken, which was confit.
Yeah.
Just going into the soup right now. And feel free. I mean, if you're feeling like you need a lot more protein, then please go ahead and add as much chicken as you want. I mean, it's
Yeah.
pretty much a chicken and a leek soup.
Yeah.
So you add in as much as you want. Yeah. So so you can see the soup is nice and thick now.
Yep.
Yeah. And what we then do is we finish it off with a touch of cream.
Oh,
Yeah. So that's towards the end. Yeah. So just give it a little bit of color. So you can see it changes the color a little bit.
yeah.
Yeah. Make sure that when you're adding your cream, that your flame is not too high.
All right.
Because what could happen is because when anything which is dairy hits the pan, which is when it's extremely hot, you run the risk of the soup curdling.
Got it.
Yeah. So the idea is to make sure
So you
that
got
your
to drop the
flames
flame before
drop
you
the flame.
you
Yeah.
decide
Make
to
sure.
put
So if you
dairy.
don't put
Another
extremely
great
high.
tip there.
Yeah. And what we're finally going to do is we're just going to finish this off as a garnish with some chopped chives. So
Okay,
some nice
chives.
bit of color in there. So what I tend to do is I take it off the flame. Yeah. Let the soup kind of settle for a bit. Like so all the flavors are kind of coming together. Lower my flame down.
Okay.
Yeah. And now obviously, you got to taste a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
so make sure your seasoning is right. Yeah, for me, just maybe a touch more of salt that's needed.
So as a fan of MasterChef Australia,
Yeah.
which I watch almost every night when the season's on.
Yeah.
They keep saying taste.
Absolutely,
How important do you
absolutely.
think it is to keep
No,
tasting
I think
your
it's
dish
very
as
important to keep tasting your food, right? I mean, otherwise you'd never know. Of course, I mean, see, if you're cooking for a singular person, then maybe you would want the salt levels to be low. But if you're cooking for a family, then obviously it's important to make sure that you've got the salt levels at least at a level which is otherwise you're just going to have food that's
Yeah, but generally, besides salt, also it's just about getting a sense of how your dish is
absolutely,
turning out, right?
absolutely.
So you keep
you got to keep
through the-
tasting it all throughout, all throughout. I mean, of course, in our case, we're a little more professional, so we don't taste as often. We always taste when the dish is just about to be put onto the serving bowl,
the
right?
pass, yeah.
On the pass, things like that. Yeah. So now that the soup is settled, it's gonna garnish it with some chopped chives. Some nice color in there. Yeah. And then, at the restaurant, we also serve this with fried leeks.
Got it.
Okay, which is part of the onion family, right? So we julienne these leeks, we cut them really, really fine. I'll show you some of them here. That's what it normally would look like. So you have a little bit of a crispy element that comes on top of the soup. Yeah, so this is garnished with our soup, and then we also touch in with a touch of, a little bit of olive oil as well, right on the top. So
Alright.
you can see a little bit of the olive oil kind of floating, but this is good quality olive oil.
Yes.
So don't try and basically use refined oil because that's something that you don't want to do. So I wouldn't necessarily say use extra virgin olive oil.
Is there any brand that you'd suggest, like when it comes to olive oil, that you think?
Yeah,
would be
I think
affordable
today
and yet
affordable in the market today is a brand called Figaro, which is available in most supermarkets today. You're available at Delfino's. You'll probably get them at Maxin's. You'll probably get them at a lot of these supermarkets. So I think Figaro is a decent olive oil for home cooking.
Got it.
That's available at a lot of these markets. Yeah, so that's about it. This is what the back end process of making a chicken and leek velouté soup is.
Got it. So this comes in later.
This comes in later.
When you're serving.
When I'm serving, this is when it's going to be put into the bowl,
you're
and that's
plating.
basically when I'm plating. That's when you'll see this going on top. We also touch it with a little bit of truffle oil, and then we do a little bit of creme fraiche as well.
Got it. Sounds good. It smells amazing.
Yeah, and we also serve our soup with local undo bread,
Yeah.
which is basically here, which I thought is great. I mean, today in France, you normally would serve it with a French baguette,
Yeah.
but for me, the undo is something closest to what a French baguette is. So we're using the local undo bread that we get from Apoder right here in Alpora, And we're just cutting it, toasting it, and serving it with a bit of garlic butter, so that you will see when we eventually show you the actual presentation of the dish.
That looks really good, chef.
Thanks, Vince. So we're just plating now. So
Yeah.
we've got all that we shot from all that we cooked in the kitchen. Basically, just going into this bowl.
Got it.
I mean, so that's just about enough for one portion. That's what we kind of serve. And that's a little bit of the chicken. Let's we pour as well. So, like you can see, extremely hearty.
Did your family ever say it's not good etiquette to smell food?
No, I don't think. I think it's great etiquette to smell food.
I love smelling food.
Absolutely.
I don't know, when I was growing up, it's like, don't smell food.
Yeah.
It's bad manners. And I don't know where that comes from.
Yeah,
Because I think
you should.
a part of
Absolutely.
enjoying food is actually,
It's actually smelling
taking in
it,
the
of
aroma
course,
of it, right?
absolutely. Totally. I mean, so here we've got some fried leeks,
Yeah.
which we're just going to garnish on the top. Yeah. We drop that in.
Yeah.
Some chopped chives again.
Yeah.
It's going in. And this is something called creme fraiche, which we make in house. Just a little dollop of it right on the top of the soup.
Okay.
That kind of sinks in. And there you go.
Ready.
Ready. And that's the undo bread, which we've toasted with just buttered with some garlic butter. And then it's warm. So I think it's a great monsoon comfort. People have liked this soup so much, they've said we were coming here when we have a hangover as well.
So it's like
Yeah.
a hangover soup.
It's like a hangover soup, yeah. It's a hangover, it's basically your next day remedy, basically.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's I think that's what some guests have told me, yeah. So, let's see how it goes.
Fantastic. Okay, so I'm going to dig in.
Yeah.
If you love garlic butter and garlicky taste, this is the perfect. But leaving that aside, I can totally understand why this is a super soup to be able to create during the monsoons, because it does feel, all that chicken broth and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Extremely healthy as well. Like,
Back in the day in Goa, we used to have something called kanj,
Yes.
which is just chicken broth with a little bit of rice and all
Yeah,
of that
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
And it's like a very hearty Goan
Hearty
soup
Goan
that was
soup.
created.
yeah.
And people would have a lot of that, just as a recovery soup. But I can definitely see that as a really tasty soup to have during the monsoons.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Chef, thank you so much for your time today.
You're
We
welcome.
appreciate your time and you sharing this dish with us.
Great.
For us at Get Creative Goa and everybody there. Guys, this is Chef Gratian from the Village Bistro. It's a brand new restaurant that's opened up here in Para. I would highly recommend you to check out their Instagram page. Give them a visit. Come in here, have the soup. It's a perfect soup for the monsoons, but have the other stuff as well. Besides that, you can follow us on Get Creative Goa, share this around, it'll really help us. And like I always say, wherever you are, whatever you do, always get creative. Cheers.